studio music teacher friends. Welcome to the Beyond Measure podcast with me, Christina Whitlock. I hang out here in your podcast feed, ready to offer a weekly dose of camaraderie as I declare myself to be your anytime piano teacher friend. Today's episode is going to offer a quick but important reminder as you prepare for the months ahead. Fair warning, I'm offering a little bit of tough love today, so buckle up and here we go. Depending on where you live in the world, there's a pretty good chance that you are currently gearing up for the back-to-school season in one way, shape, or form. I want to invite you to check out the power hours that I offer over in my Patreon community. By joining at either subscription level, that's $3 or $6 a month, you get access to weekly power hour sessions. And what that means is basically a group of us log into Zoom, and then we quickly share our project or our goal for the hour, and then we mute our devices and get to work. At the end of the hour, we come back together for a quick second and report on what we've done. Now, I know it seems like we should all be able to do that without joining a community, but you and I both know how easy it is to get distracted. You say you're going to spend an hour organizing your studio library, but then a million other tasks get in the way, right? Or you get a text in the middle of your project, and then your whole project spirals out of control. Well, when you are working during Power Hour, that group accountability really helps you avoid distractions. I speak from experience here. Plus, it's just fun. It feels like such a treat to work alongside my friends from all over the place on Monday mornings. So, if $3 a month means that I am going to make consistent progress on something that matters to me, count me in. Check out patreon.com/beyondmeasurepodcast for more details, or you can find the link in today's episode notes. Okay, moving on. So we are talking today about communicating with our studio families. Now, if you have been around here for any length of time, you probably know this is a topic I feel really passionate about. In fact, last year, I declared that my primary focus for my business was going to be on improving frequency and clarity of communications to my studio families. I talked about that in episode 92 of the podcast, which, interestingly enough, released almost exactly 1 year ago today. I also followed that episode with one that was focused on the principles that I use for effective, endearing written communications. That happens to be episode 93, which also told you about a free download that I have, which outlines my thoughts on written communication. Many teachers have told me that document was really helpful, so I am linking it again in today's show notes along with both of those episodes. So, between episodes 92 and 93, I have actually talked a lot about communication here on the show. I am not one to just simply regurgitate that same information to you, so instead, I really want to share just one mega important reminder with you. Are you ready? All right, this one is essential, friends. Studio communication is more than what we put in writing. I'm going to say that one again. Studio communication is more than what we put in writing. Now, maybe that sounds obvious. Like you're probably thinking, yeah, Christina, it obviously includes the stuff that we say as well. And obviously, you're right. But studio communication also happens to include the stuff that we do not say. Like, as in, it means the stuff that we do. So, here's an example. I'm going to give you a scenario that we are all familiar with. Let's say you put your sweat and tears into crafting the perfect studio policy. We've all been there. You read it and revise it 100 times, and then you send it out into the world. Surely your studio families are going to give it their undivided attention and take notes and commit every word you said to their memory, right? Well, of course, we all know that's not what happens. But I hear from teachers all the time who tell me, I have this parent who's upset about this situation, but they signed my policy, so it's not my fault. They already agreed to it. And of course, there is some truth there. I mean, if a parent signs your policy, then absolutely, they should have read it carefully and they should agree to hold up their end of the bargain. However, if you want to avoid the drama of the heated conversations that can come up around whatever policy it is, you are going to have to be a grown-up business person and actually talk about these things before they arise. See, I told you I was going to pull out the tough love. Chances are you know fully well which of your policies are going to invite the most controversy. It's likely something to do with makeup lessons or lack thereof, or maybe tuition structures, maybe event participation, perhaps your sick policy. I'm trying to think of other infractions, like maybe practice expectations or punctuality when it comes to lesson arrivals or dismissals. I mean, I think that just about covers the gamut of studio conflict, right? Well, here is the hard truth. A lot of us teachers like to hide behind written policies. We don't like the discomfort of having these verbal policy-related discussions with our studio families. We would rather just pop it in writing, ask for a signature, and move forward on our merry way. Well, friends, you are welcome to keep operating that way. But the bad news is, you really are just asking for more work in the long run. If we really want to avoid confusion and unnecessary back and forths with our studio families, we need to get comfortable communicating our policies and expectations in all the forms. So this includes writing, but it also includes verbal conversations, and it includes our actions. Because, let's be honest, sometimes our actions don't exactly align with our written policies. If you say you have a no makeup policy, but then continually offer other options to your students, then you are the one muddying the waters. I could give you a million examples of times our own actions don't align with our policies, but suffice to say, friends, you've got to be consistent. A lot of us are just more comfortable addressing conflict in writing. I know, I hear you, I'm right there with you. But as we know, the tone of written communications are often misconstrued. And written communication often takes more time. Like, let's say you have a parent ask you a question on their way out the door. Maybe they say, "Oh, by the way, Susie has a birthday party next week and she won't be at her lesson. So can we just credit the money for that lesson to next month?" Now, some of you are fine with that. I get it. But I know an increasing number of us have decided that it's not fair for our budgets to feel the burn of Susie's friend's birthday party. So, when faced with this question, which was posed quite nonchalantly on the way out the door, I know teachers who react in very different ways. Some will hold their ground and they'll sit there and explain the policy right then and there on the spot. Now, I think that's great, but I find these teachers to be few and far between. Others will hesitate, they'll kind of make a face, and then they'll say, yeah, sure. And then they'll go gripe about it to a friend and proceed to feel taken advantage of for at least the next 30 days. I know others will say, hey, I'll email you about that. And then they will go sit at their computer and spend 45 minutes stewing over how to write the perfect email to explain why they deserve to be paid for that lesson. Now, there is nothing terribly wrong about that last one, except, of course, time is money. And I think it's best just to pony up and address questions and potential conflicts the moment they arise. I think we can save ourselves a lot of time this way. Many of us have struggled from time to time with parent behavior, like during the lesson. Either they're not keeping a close enough eye on younger siblings that they have in tow, or maybe they're interrupting you a lot, whatever the case may be. I often hear teachers who say, help me write an email to this parent explaining why I need them to stop doing this thing. Well, there are times when a written record is helpful, but more often than not, that really backfires. Like if I have a disruptive parent in a lesson, I find a way to comment during the lesson itself. Waiting to send an email requires time that I don't want to spend, and it ends up feeling really formal to the parent. So the likelihood that they will misinterpret an email asking them to alter their behavior is quite high. Many of us have had students show up feeling ill, despite having policies stating the student should stay home, right? I know. I also know that many of us will go ahead and teach the student anyway, and then attempt to tell the parent later that they should not have brought the student to the lesson. But, that's really too late, right? The student still got his lesson, and you were exposed to the germs. So it just feels like your actions are contradicting your policy, just as the parents' actions were conflicting as well. The difference is it's your policy, and no one is going to enforce it for you. I have a great episode from the early days of this podcast. It's episode 49 that talks about my rule of 3. That's a good one. You should definitely jump back and check it out. The basic premise is the rule that if you want someone to absorb what you are telling them, you need to say it 3 times. 3 times, friends. This is clutch for teachers in so many ways, but it also ties into our theme today. If you really want studio families to abide by your policies and attend your events and know when the studio is closed and how you feel about practice and, all the other things, you need to be communicating these points at least 3 times, preferably in more than one way. Again, that's episode 49 if you want that particular kick in the pants, okay? Like I said earlier, we kind of know the policies that are likely to be stumbling blocks, don't we? So why don't we take 5 minutes during the initial student interview and say something to the effect of, look, it's really important to me that I can stay focused on making music here in the studio. So I just need to make sure that you are fully comfortable with my business practices before we get invested. I know you read the policy, but let me go over a few key points. I just love that kind of conversation because it shows your commitment to the musical journey. And it's fair, right? It doesn't feel cold or overbearing or accusatory in any way. There's this saying in the medical community that goes, like an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And I happen to think communication works exactly the same way. So, as we prepare to wrap up here, I just want to say it one more time, that studio communication is more than what you put in writing. We've got to be brave, friends. Let's toast. Studio teacher friends from all around the world, today we are embracing our bravest selves and taking steps forward together to communicate more consistently and more proactively this year. May your actions and your words always contribute to the studio culture that you want to have. This is me raising my glass to you, my forward-visioned teacher friends. Hear, hear. All right, that puts a bow on episode 139. In the show notes for this episode, you are going to find quite a few helpful links. I am linking a few related episodes, including episode 49 about my rule of 3, as well as episode 53 about making exceptions. That's one that's just been super top of mind for me this week, and I feel compelled to tell you to go listen to episode 53, especially this time of year. Making exceptions can set us up for a year-long feeling of resentment, and I don't want you to fall into that trap. Episode 53 gives you a framework to decide when exceptions are a good idea and when they are not. Also in the show notes for this episode are links to 2 printables that I have designed concerning communication. One, as I mentioned, is focused on principles of endearing, effective communication. It's my guide to everything written, like texts and emails and whatever else. The other is a list of 20 prompts for communication with studio families. So if you are looking to increase parental communications, but you're tired of saying the same old things, this printable will give you some more ideas of things that you can talk about. In case it's not evident by today's episode, I happen to think communication with our studio families is a really big deal. You can find all of those resources and more in the show notes for this episode. The show notes are available in your podcast player, or you can head to christinawhitlock.com/episode 139. Thank you so much, friends. Onward and upward toward brave communications.